With our get to-dos route now in place, it is time to add a test case for it and a missing semicolon, which I left off right here. That's not going to cause the program to crash, but it is a good idea. Now, before we can actually write the test case, we have to deal with a different problem. The first thing we do inside of our test file is delete all the to-dos, and this happens before every single test. Now, the get to-dos route pretty much lives off the fact that there is to-dos it can return. It will handle no to-dos, but for our test case, we do want some data in that database. In order to add this data, what we're going to do is modify before each, adding some seed data. This means that our database is still going to be predictable. It's always going to look exactly the same when it starts, but it will have some items in it. Now, in order to do that, the first thing we're going to do is make up an array of dummy to-dos. Now, these to-dos only need the text property since everything else is going to get populated by Mongoose. Right here, I can create a constant called to-dos, setting it equal to an array. And we're going to have an array of objects where each object has a text property. For example, this one could have a text of first test to do. Then I can add on a second object as the second item in the array with a text property equal to second test to do. Excellent. Now, before we can actually write the test case, we do have to modify before each using a brand new Mongoose method called insert many, which takes an array like the one we have here and it inserts all of those documents into the collection. This means that we are going to need to tweak the code real quick. Instead of having a simple arrow function that calls done, I'm going to tack on some curly braces, and inside of the callback function, we're going to call todo.insert many. And we're going to call insert many with the array we defined above. This is going to insert all of the to-dos in this array, our two to-dos, and then we can do something like call done. I'm going to return the response. This is going to let us chain callbacks. And then I can tack on then, and I can use a really simple expression-based arrow function. All I'm going to do right here is call done using that expression syntax. Now let's go ahead and run the test suite, and I'll warn you, the other tests are going to have problems because the numbers that they assert are now going to be incorrect. Over in the terminal, I'm going to start up the test suite, npm run, test watch, and once that test suite gets started, I'm going to move back into Atom. And you can see, as promised, both of the test cases failed. We expected 3 to be 1, and we expected 2 to be 0. Everything is now off by 2. To fix this, we're going to use 2 different techniques. For the first test, what we're going to do is only find to-dos where the text equals the text we have above. This means that the resulting length is still going to be 1, and the first item should still have a text property equal to the text above. For the second test, we're going to leave the find call the way it is. Instead, we're going to make sure that the length of the database is 2. There should only be 2 documents in the to-dos collection because that's all we added up above, and this was testing a failure, so a third one should not have been added. With this in place, you can see our 2 test cases are now passing, so we're ready to move on, adding a new describe block down below. Right here, I'm going to add a describe block. We're going to describe the get to-dos route, passing in our arrow function, and then we can add our single test case. It should get all to-dos. Now in this case, all to-dos refers to the 2 to-dos we just added up above. I'm going to pass in an arrow function with the done argument, and we are good to go. All we have to do is start the super test request. I'm going to request something on the Express application. It's going to be a get request, so we'll call get, passing in the URL /to-dos. With this in place, we're now ready to make our assertions. We're not sending any data in the request body, but we are going to make some assertions about what comes back. We're going to expect that a 200 comes back, and we're also going to create a custom assertion expecting something about the body. Here we'll provide our callback function with the response, and we're going to expect that response.body.todos has a length of 2, to be 2. Now that we have this in place, all we have to do is tack on an end call like we did in the previous section and pass done in as the argument. There is no need to provide a function to end like we do up above because we're not doing anything asynchronously. With this in place, we are now good to go. We can save the server test file. This is going to rerun the test suite using nodemon, and we should see our new test, and it should be passing. If it is, we're done. And right here, we get just that. We have our section for post to-dos. Both of those tests are passing, and we have our section for get to-dos, and the one test is indeed passing. Now, if I change the status to 201, the test is going to fail because that's not the status that came back. If I change the length to 3, it's going to fail because we only added 2 to-dos in as the seed data. Now that we're done, let's go ahead and make a commit saving this code. I'm going to shut down the test watch script, run get status, and right here we have 2 modified files, which means I can use get commit with the A flag and the M flag. Remember, the A flag adds modified files to the next commit. A good message for this commit is going to be add tests for get /to-dos. I'm going to make the commit, push it up to GitHub, and we are done. With this in place, we are ready to move on, adding a brand new route that is coming up next. I am super excited to get to it, so stay tuned. I will see you then.